All right, as promised, I'm going to show you a compositing image that I did with one of the backgrounds I just shot in New York City. So I've got gazillions of composites and I could have pulled out a number of them. But I thought, well, let me just do one real quick and I'll show you with an image I shot just recently for this masterclass of the background I did in the Grand Central, Central Park at the Pavilion. And there was a lot of people. I'm going to show you how I got all those people out in another tutorial, but I wanted to show you quickly sort of what I'm thinking about when I'm shooting a background, if I'm doing it for compositing, which you may be here solely watching this masterclass because you want to learn how Joel Grimes does all his backgrounds. So I wanted to show you a quick retouch I did, but I'm not going to retouch the whole thing. It doesn't make any sense because I've got hours and hours and hours of tutorials on the compositing process that I go through. So, but I think it's important for you to see, and when I'm setting up for a shot, I always think about, if I think this is a compositing background, where I'm going to put that person. So I kind of, in my head, I kind of move around a little bit. And I'm thinking about where do I place a person if that's possible. One thing I didn't do, and I don't believe I showed specifically, I might have, there's actually one fire station I did outside of Brooklyn that I think I did, and I've got some filming of me shooting both angles, two angles of height. So I run my tripod down to its about whatever that height is, you know, this lowest setting there. And then I run the tripod head about chin height. And I'll do a low angle and a high angle just in case I'm shooting a waist up, or I'm doing a waist up composite or a full length composite. So that's one thing that I do if I go, oh, this is a great background. In this case, I did not do that because I wasn't really thinking about this as a compositing background. Because, you know, again, I'm running around New York City just shooting pictures. But for the most part, if I go back to all my old landscapes, or say urban landscapes, you will see that, if you look at the history of my images, you'll see like two versions, a low and a high. And that's about all I do in terms of preparing for the next, you know, step of compositing. So let's look at this. So here's my background as I shot it with all the stacking done. So there's a bunch of people, and we'll do this for you. I got a couple scenarios where I'll do this for you to show you how I take out the crowds. But I want to show you, this is, I'm going to click both of these files here. And so let's go through, I'll take down all these here and I'll show you as it builds. All right, so one of the things I do is I look at where the light is coming into the scene. So the bulk of the light is coming from the right side of the frame. So camera right, but subject left, if I put a subject in there. And so that's where the daylight is coming in. But there's another but opening that coming from the left into the scene. So it's kind of dark, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to add a little extra glow coming through there just a little bit. All right. Then I did a black and white layer, and I set it to luminosity. So what I do is, here's the black and white, and if you look at my properties, I'm manipulating my tones, color sliders, and it adjusts the tones. However, I'm going to then switch to luminosity so it gives me that adjustment in tones but keeps it in color. Little trick there. Been using that for years. Then I had a little glow behind the subject. I actually did two of those because I kind of wanted to feather them. And then there's my subject. So let's take the glow out for a second. Now the glow, what that does, atmosphere, let's call it atmosphere. It kind of separates that subject a little bit. Now I probably overdo it because it's my style. You may look at it and go, All right, so then I have a photo filter let's get rid of these properties here for a second. I have a photo filter, and it is a warming, let's see, now I got my properties back. A warming filter, right? Just to kind of balance her to the background. Because I'm colorblind, I'm taking a risk. So we did a second one. So I did, I think what I did was I did a black mask. So I isolated that filter, I think, on just the legs because they were going a little too cool in temperature. So then this is an overall one on her, and I've got them tagged, so they're only affecting the layer of her, not below. I'm tagging the image to the layer below, so the little arrow, and I do that by holding down my Option, and it will tag the layer to the layer below it. All right, so then we have a levels that go and darken the legs because light falls generally from top to bottom. Even though the light's pushing light across, it's still generally light falls from top to bottom. So you want to darken underneath usually a subject. So I do that all the time. And then I looked at the hand, it was too light. So I did a gradient from the top to bottom on her hand, just to make it look, and then I did a little burn just on that one edge was too much. And then I added a black and white overall to her, well, on her, because I did that on the, I think the original one I did a little black and white just to desaturate. So basically I'm just desaturating. And you can do that by hitting hue saturation and do the same thing. And this is probably not would be one of what I call one of my final finished edits necessarily, but I did this for this image here. But of a girl that I shot in New York City, happened to be in New York City, a ballerina girl. So it was for Canon when I did this project for them. But to sell the fake. So here's what I wanted to show you is that when I take these layers, Command T, it allows me to move her around in this scene, right? Now, because I got the glow, I picked up the glow. I shouldn't have done that. Let's do this. Let me do it again. Deselect here. Let's just get this one, Command T, and then I can move it around. So I say, you know what? Maybe it's for an advertisement. I'm going to put it over here. We'll put copy over here. In this case, probably I'd go over in this side and then put the type over in the dark area. I'm not the designer, but you see what I'm saying. But I can move it around. So that's the beauty of composites, is that I can make the decision from the sort of creative aesthetics and composition after the fact. Good or bad to that. I like to shoot on location, have the subject there. But anyways, so that's a composite. That's how I use a landscape or urban landscape background. And I think it creates the mood and the whole thing. I love it. To me, I get so excited to put these things together. And it's, again, the creative process that I like. And I'm no creative genius, but I do think that I am driven by the creative process. So therefore, I'm going to play with this until I get an image that I want to hang on my wall. So with that, we're going to move on. And if you want to look at some of my compositing techniques, I have so many tutorials on that, but the bulk of what I built out a couple of years ago, I called it Joel Grimes Academy. It's under the complete pack in my options to, if you say, Joel, where is that at? Under the complete pack, under the retouch portion of that. There was the artist, the craft, the retouch, the business, and the print. And so under the retouch, you will see, complete sections on how to do that. And I talk a lot about lens choice and matching the background, selling the fake. I always call the idea of selling the fake, that she was there. And the best sort of insight I can give you in that is that when it comes to selling the fake, you're not selling reality. At least I'm not, because there's no such thing as reality in a photograph. So what I'm selling is emotional impact, which has a touch of fantasy. So it's the emotional impact. That's what I'm selling. And so it actually, in some ways, takes a little bit of a pressure off me, because I realize that I'm not trying to chase reality. I'm just trying to sell an emotion. So I'll end with this. Every photograph that you create falls under that same category, is that you're selling not reality, but an emotional impact to your viewers. The more emotions that you can bring out in a viewer, the more successful that photograph will be. I'm not talking about someone weeping, but it's someone that says, well, my daughter was in ballet and that looks like my daughter, or I love going to the opera or the ballet. I like to watch, the arts, the ballerinas, the art form of that, theater, whatever it is that you go to. My wife loves that. Brings back memories. So if I have an old fisherman on a dock, you say, yeah, oh, there's a grandpa with his grandson sitting on a dock fishing. That brings memories back of when I was with my son, or I'm a grandpa with my grandson. It's bringing out emotions into the photograph. And so you're going to be much more successful with your photograph when you do that. So that's my goal. And again, I'm not always successful at that. There's some pictures that work and some don't. And I'm always striving to get better at that. But that's what I would say, is bring out the emotions and you'll win over your audience. So we're going to continue to move on. All right, so welcome back. This is where I'm going to talk about the equipment that I use. And before I do that, I want to say that I know that not everyone has an unlimited budget where they can go out and buy all the lenses and whatever. When I started out, just like you, I'm sure you bought one camera and a lens, and then you built that system on. This camera here was the first camera that I ever had. I was 19 years old. I parked cars for about 10 hours, and then I would go a couple days a week. I would go bus tables in the evening. So I worked 2 jobs. It took me all summer. It cost me $350. I think I was making about $3 an hour, $3.25, maybe it was $2.25, whatever it was, 1977. And so I worked my butt off to get this camera, and then I bought 2 other lenses eventually for this. And then the next camera I bought was a medium format camera. I worked all summer painting houses, $5 an hour. And I was able to buy a medium format camera. I had that camera 19 years before I upgraded it to a Mamiya RZ. It was Mamiya RB 6x7, then a Mamiya RZ 6x7. And then eventually I had that camera and I sold it to go to digital. But so I've worked my way through the ranks of getting equipment. Now, of course, I'm with Canon. They don't give me a camera gear, but I do get a discount on a couple lenses, a couple things each contract. But I still have to pay for stuff. And, I'm like you. I don't have an unlimited budget. So here's what I would say with that. I get probably more emails on equipment than anything. So, and that's natural. People want to go, hey, should I go mirrorless? Or should I go, I got My one camera's 24 megapixels, but should I go to 40 megapixels? You know, what's the difference? How does that all, you know, should I invest the money? There's so many questions. Comes lenses. We're going to talk about tilt shift lenses here in a minute. There's a lot of options, a lot of things to think about. Here's what I would say. No matter what you buy, maybe I get in trouble saying this, pay cash. Don't put it on a credit card and then, you know, say I'm going to pay it off later, and you end up, you know, stuck. I've been stuck, you know, having a credit card bill that I got to work off somehow. So buy what you can afford, and you know, take one piece of equipment at a time. So, first question people are going to ask: single lens reflex cameras versus mirrorless. I know that's what everyone's going to ask. Okay, so when the mirrorless came along, Canon was slow to the market. Canon's always slow to the market. They've been like that since the company probably started. In terms of their philosophy, is they don't rush to anything. They build a camera that's like a tank, and so they're usually, it doesn't mean their cameras are flawless and never break down. I'm just saying they do build them and have a reputation that have a very solid camera, can bounce it around. Don't bounce it around, but if you do happen to knock it and bang it around, chances are it'll keep working. Single lens reflex camera, obviously you got a mirror and the, I don't have one anymore. Well, other than this one, that's a film camera, but the digital single lens reflex, I've sold all mine. Couple reasons why I did. Canon wants me and wanted me to jump into mirrorless, and they said, Joel, look, this is our future. And I had my oh boy, it's been so long now. Not long, but my brain is the 50 megapixel they had, RS. I love that camera, single lens reflex. Okay, so here's an EF lens, meaning it's for the single reflex system. Okay, I've got a couple lenses over there that still have that. These lenses are EF lenses. This is an RF lens, the new lenses. Okay, but I was like, mirrorless. I don't really. No, I like my single lens reflex. What's gonna give me that I don't have now? Really, in terms of weight, you don't save that much. Okay, so people say, "Oh, the mirrorless is so light. My camera bag is going to be much easier to carry around." Not true. By the time you put your lenses in there, you're going to have pretty much the same amount of weight. It might be a little lighter, but I'm just saying it's not a big selling point for me. You are not looking through the lens. You have a digital viewfinder, so it's not optically looking through, you're looking through digital. Now, when they first came out, they were maybe not very good. And there was a drag. So if you went like this, it'd kind of like, ghost. And that's all been solved with the newer mirrorless. And I had people that would come up to me and say, I used to be with Canon and they have a Sony hanging around their neck, but now I went with Sony. And I go, okay, show me a picture you photographed with your Sony. I want to see it. Oh, well, I don't have any to show you. Why not? Well, how long you had your camera? Oh, 6 months, a year. Where's the pictures? I want to see. Give me a reason why you went to Sony and you're sitting there touting all about Sony. And it was just kind of like this movement that happened, jumping to Sony. And I just got a little tired of it. And so when mirrorless came along with Canon, I'm like, I don't really care about mirrorless. Well, when Canon took a couple of us Explorer Light photographers down in their basement in New York, on Long Island, and said, here's the future. So there's really a couple things about the mirrorless system that I would like to present to you. And again, I'm not trying to get you to go sell your single lens reflex cameras. I'm just going to tell you why I went with the mirrorless. The number one is this hole here, the lens mount hole is bigger than the single lens reflex camera that Canon or even Nikon or anyone, it's a bigger hole, right? So what does that do? That gives the lens manufacturers the ability to create some new lenses, and they don't have to go and design a lens like this big old honking mother thing here. This is a 11 to a 24, beautiful lens, one of the most optically engineered marvels of modern history right here. But to build this lens, say for a mirrorless, would probably be a lot smaller, right? It doesn't mean that all the RF or EF lenses, no, RF lenses are smaller. It's just that they have, optically, they don't have to throw the lens a further distance to get to your sensor, film plane or sensor. And so with the mirrorless, you're able, I say able, the designing of the lenses and the manufacturing of lenses give you some options that you probably wouldn't get otherwise. So it's opening up a new line of lenses. I don't know the future of what Canon is going to bring out, but I don't have it. It's in my bag right over there, but I have the 50-1.2 and a 50 or 85-1.2. Beautiful lenses, big honking lenses, but beautiful. And the resolution from the edge to edge at wide open is jaw-dropping. It's so amazing compared to the older style lenses on a R or single lens reflex. So they've minimized aberration, which is when you shoot it wide open, okay? So when I just did a cowboy guy last week, shot 50-1.2 wide open. It's just incredibly razor sharp. And now in that case, it wasn't edge to edge because it was, you know, a portrait. But when I do shoot wide open, the edge to edge is amazing. So you get the lenses, new lenses, less aberration, things like that in the new line. So this is where Canon is going right now. Will they completely go away from the single lens reflex? I don't know, maybe one day maybe. But don't go out and just get rid of all your gear right now unless you really want a lens that's only available in the new RF design. So their new long telephoto lenses are extremely lightweight. So when you're doing wildlife, it's a lot lighter. You can handhold them better than you could before. And so this is the new era of photography. In the end, will you see a difference? For the most part, no. If you're shooting urban landscapes, you probably won't see a difference if you have mirrorless or the single lens reflex. Okay, all right. So now, the other thing that, again, with the urban landscape, you probably don't really necessarily need is the autofocus A-phase tracking on this is phenomenal. Now, one thing that this camera does that I'm not sure the new single lens reflex cameras have, my older cameras did not, is the new focus stacking in camera. And it is phenomenal. You're going to see me behind the scenes doing that. So there's some new features in here that give me some options I didn't have before. And I think probably the new single lens reflex cameras will probably have that in there. It's just that technology isn't necessarily limited to a mirrorless. It's just that it now has it. And I'm like, oh, this is great. And if it did have it in my old camera, I didn't know it. So I don't think it did. But anyways, that's the camera body right there. All right. I have a Really Right Stuff L bracket on here, which allows me to go horizontal, vertical on my tripod, which dead center, puts it dead center over the camera, or over the center point of the tripod. So that's a good thing to have. Really Right Stuff is a great company. I've been with them for probably 20 years now. 20, actually more than that, because I think 2000 is when I bought their first ball head. I showed you the 11 to 24. It's a great super wide, I guess it's what they call linear corrected, whatever, f4 lens, but it's a monster to carry. And so don't pull it out that often, but when I do, it's like, wow, I'm so glad I got this lens. But it's a monster to carry, and it's not a lens I use all the time. The 15 or the 16-35 in the older Canon EF. This is the R. Oh, I get so confused. This is the RF lens. It's a 15-35, 2.8. They make a f4 version. This is a beauty right here. So that's kind of what I shot most of my urban landscapes with, the older 16 to 35. It was on my camera all the time. Roaming the streets, one lens, pretty much. Then I started doing more tilt shift stuff. And I got the 17 and I shift it left and right. So I get a equivalent to about a 10 millimeter angle of view in a panorama, and I stitch them together. We're going to go all over the tilt shift in another session. But once I got this started to sort of not get used as much. And then I got my 24 tilt shift also. So the 2 tilt shift lenses there. They get heavy though. You start carrying all this stuff and it starts bogging down my backpack. So with these, I have to have an adapter. So here is the standard adapter that, well, you have to put this on there to put it to this body, okay? So there's good and bad to this. The good is, here it is. We now have drop-in filters, okay? So with this lens, I can put this combo on here, and I can put all my, right here, my ND filters. Here's a 10 stop, no, 10 stop, that I can now, instead of, there's no filter that, well, no, there's not that I know of. I can't put a 10 stop on here or any filter on here. So, and my 17 tilt shift here, I did buy a filter that will go on here. It cost me $500 for the filter and the mount. And the ND filter was terrible, but I had no choice. So if I shot black and white, fine, but color, terrible. The Breakthrough Photography filters, I have both. I have the drop-in and I have the screw mount, the front screw mount. So I have a 3 stop, a 6 stop, a 10 stop, a 15 stop. So we'll talk more about those. But, and they go on these lenses. I could put one on this lens if I had to, but I can use the drop in for that. Now I don't have my 24 to 70. It's sitting over in the case over there. But I use for these. So, so the drop-in filter adapter onto my older lenses is a dream come true. Eventually, I'm sure these lenses will fade out, but for now, this is a great solution and very happy with it. All right. So I got my drop-in filters. I've talked about lenses. Here is my nodal point system that I use, or panel ball head system that I use. We're going to cover this more. It breaks down here, and I'll show you how it breaks down later. I'm not going to do that, but it breaks down. I can put it in the side pocket of my camera bag. But then again, I got to carry that around. So I'll show you a session where I used that in conjunction with my tilt shift lenses. So I had best of both worlds. I raised up my camera for the perspective control, then I stitched along. Little complicated, but it actually works incredible. So that's that. Here's the Cam Ranger. The Cam Ranger, it sets up, I can use my iPhone to control. Now I can use my iPhone also, which I do, I'll show you a session on that, where I can control the new Canon cameras have that built in. Very limited to what you can do on your phone, but you can trigger it so you don't have a cable release or vibrating or whatever. The Cam Ranger I use primarily for bracketing my ISO for long exposures, whether it's water, clouds, or strobing portraits outdoors. We're not talking about strobing portraits here, but this is invaluable. Now, I've been with Cam Ranger. I said I've been using Cam Ranger for a long time, and they kind of semi-sponsored me over the years, and they're great folks. And this is the updated version 2. The only thing is that it's not a perfect world. Even Canon's connection doesn't always work. Anytime you're going to have a connection of a smartphone to a camera, you are going to run into situations where it's not a perfect world. And you're in a hurry and there's the lights right and all of a sudden it's like lost connection and you're like scratching your head, what am I doing wrong? And you get frustrated and whatever. It's not a perfect world. However, I would say that I have tried a number of other products. I just had the Arsenal 2 Pro, and it does not bracket ISO, so it didn't do me any good. I had it for a couple weeks and then I sent it back. There are some things on that seem pretty impressive, but for me, it just didn't work. I would recommend this, but it's like $300. You can get on sale for $275 sometimes, maybe $250. But when I recommend it to people, they go, well, you know, it's not perfect. I go, yeah, it's not, okay? But it's invaluable when I use it. Let's talk about backup. So when I'm in the field, I have two of these. They're a little pocket SanDisk. This is a 1 terabyte. I probably would get, next time I'd buy the 2 terabytes. I think it was $100 a piece. So I have two of these. So what I do is, the minute I get back to a hotel or wherever it is, the car, if I'm camping and doing landscapes or out there in the middle of nowhere, I will immediately back them up on this drive, and I mirror it with another drive. And then I take, and let's say I'm in a car. So I go, well, later on tonight I'll go and I'll back it up again on this. This is mirrored. This is Amazon, that little sticky stuff that it's really super sticky, and I just cut it so it fits in there. And these mirror each other. I can pull it apart if I had to. So I got main and backup. So now what I have is, I have technically 4 backups. And then my cards, what I do is on a trip like New York or wherever, a 10-day trip, I usually have enough cards to go, and I don't erase those cards until I get back to my office, and then I can say, everything's good. But in some cases I may have to go, say you would go to Iceland for 2 weeks or something, and you took your private jet there, you might want to, well, you got 4 backups, probably plenty. But definitely hold on to those if I can, just as one extra precaution. So let's say it got corrupted the first time I downloaded it here, then I backed it up on the other one, and I backed it. So now I got the originals I can go back to. So that's $100. These are probably $100 now. They're not very expensive. And so that's that. So, one last thing. This little device is a Western Digital. It is the MyPocket Wireless Pro. Been out for a couple years. And what it does is it allows you to take your card. So let's say I don't have my laptop. So I have my laptop in the field. And I go, you know what, I don't carry that. I'm going to China for 3 weeks, and I don't want to take my laptop, but I want to go shoot nonstop. You can go take your cards and you put them in there and hit the button, and it downloads them, creates a folder by timestamp. And then you can, with your app, you can view them. You go, oh, yeah, hey, cool. I got all my pictures. And you can, you're not going to edit them. You could probably bring them into a editor here to say, hey, here's what I'm shooting, send it to a friend or something. But it's on here, and you can view it. You can also use this as a battery bank, since there's a battery in here. So if you wanted to charge your phone, you can still charge that against that as a extra backup battery. So I'm not sure the cost of this. I paid probably 2 years ago, and I don't know, $300, maybe it's $400. I don't even know. A little pricey, and I think it's 1 terabyte, and it may not even be 1 terabyte. It may be like half a terabyte or something. But I bought it just in case there was a scenario where I could not use my laptop. And with all that, the last thing I'll do is tripod. So you're going to see me. I'm going to do a whole thing on tripods later, but small tripod, Really Right Stuff. I used it in New York, and I was a little embarrassed because I always preach the heaviest not heaviest, but the heaviest duty tripod you can carry. This is carbon fiber, but it's quite a bit heavier. But I knew I was flying to New York with a bunch of gear, and I was going to walk. We probably walked 10 miles a day, and I figured, you know what? And that getting on the subways and whatever. I took the small one, and I paid the price for it a little bit because it's a little not as stable, and a couple times you'll see me with my column up a little bit because I couldn't get over fences or railings, and I never try to go up very high on this, but in a lot of cases I had to do it. But again, the wind wasn't really blowing, or maybe it was, I don't know. So I don't always practice what I preach. Sometimes I have to go with a smaller tripod, and then, it's not gonna be as stable as the bigger one. But in the case of roaming streets for 10 hours, you may not wanna carry a bigger tripod. So I got away with that. With that, I think equipment-wise, we'll talk about things as I go, but that gives you a general overview. I'm sure you probably have some questions. Hey, Joel, what about this? I'm not covering everything here. But we'll try to, as I go along, I might remember some things that I did not bring up here. With that, we'll continue to move on.
And when the words run out along with our old age.
All right, we're going to do something that actually I had never really done to the extent that I've done it for this master class, and that is to test my ISO. I have obviously shot I had different ISOs and looked at them and sort of made my evaluation with each camera that I've owned. But I thought for this master class, it would be great to take and go through all my ISOs, take a look at them. I've blown them all up to a 100% zoomed in, doing side-by-sides, looking at the original with noise reduction added to see where my ISO, how far I can push it. So I think the first thing that I would recommend is that you don't go by my end results, because I may look at something and say, oh yeah, that's acceptable to me. And you may go, no, it's not acceptable to me. Or the other way, you may say, oh, I can live with that. And I say, I can't live with that much noise. So it's really a personal thing. And of course, each camera is going to be different. So if you happen to have my exact camera, the EOS R5, the new mirrorless, is what I'm using now. You still need to go and do your own tests to determine where how far you can push your ISO. Now, this is also going to change depending on the subject matter. So if I'm doing a portrait, I may say, you know what, I can push it further than if I'm, say doing a landscape or an urban landscape, or in certain scenarios like maybe where there's water, lots of reflections, highlights, specular highlights and everything. So each scene, maybe I just happen to be standing there waiting for the light when I thought, oh, wouldn't it be great to do an ISO test? And so that's how this all came about. So I think this is a good lesson, a good you can follow along and go, oh, you know what, that's something I should probably do also. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into the scene where I kind of do a little talk out there. Every time I went to start talking, there would be a helicopter that fly over, or the subway train would come making all sorts of noise. It was really hard to do in the field sort of dialogue, talking into the camera. You'll see throughout the masterclass, I've done some of that, but in my little space here, it's nice and quiet. It's much easier. Plus, if I make a mistake, I can go back and go, oh, I forgot to say that. when you filming out in the field, and later you go, you know, I never mentioned that. I should have mentioned that. So bear with me as I go through the master class, and some of you may ask, why don't you talk more out in the field? Well, it's just a whole nother animal to tackle when you're trying to deal with sound. That was the main thing. And of course, you know, I'm trying to take a picture and trying to get the best light, and sometimes you forget to go and explain something. So with that, we're going to go into the field, and then we'll come back and we're going to look at my results. All right, we're on the Brooklyn side looking back to Manhattan. We're in front of the pylons, and before we get the city lights starting to come up, I want to do an ISO test. And the reason why I want to do that is I want to know what ISO I can live with in terms of the highest ISO. So I shot, or I'm going to shoot a picture at 50, 100, 200, 400, all the way up to, I think it's 256,000 ISO. And then what I do is later in Lightroom or Bridge, I'll go back and I'll look at every single one of those images, and I'll find out what ISO I can live with. You can also add a little denoise in there, maybe to save a little bit. So you say 3200 ISO is acceptable, or maybe it's only 1000 ISO is acceptable. At some point you'll go, I can live with this. With each camera that I get, it gets a little bit better in terms of ISO capabilities, high ISO capabilities. So you want to find out where your camera is and what that sweet spot is. And then you can go, oh, for landscape, I won't go above 800. Or for you know, a scenario like this where it's late light, I might go to 2000. So then you know where your range is. All right, so let's take a look at our results. Now, I have set my camera to go and expand the ISO from 100 to, I can't remember what Canon defaults to, maybe 64,000 or something like that. I don't know. You can go in your menu settings and expand it. So I always go to 50 ISO. And the reason why I do 50 ISO is because if I'm doing long exposures, I get that one extra stop that I can do a longer, you know, without an ND filter if I have to. So it gives me that extra push. I would say that you normally would not go to 50 ISO unless you, again, wanted a longer exposure of some sort. So I've got 50 ISO all the way to, I think it's 512,000 is my top end, highest end. This is subjective, and so we're going to look at we can look at 3 different images. The original one, if we need to, and then we look at the 100% blown up. That's really the most critical. And then the noise reduction. So what I did was, when I went through my Adobe Camera Raw through Bridge, and you do this Lightroom too, is I applied a 50% noise reduction. And why did I pick 50%? Well, I thought, okay, you know, I just went along and said, okay, that's a good midpoint. I would generally, over time, I would probably not ever go much more than 50. Now, there's another little trick that you can do that I've done on a couple images that I've worked in the past where I had to do, say, a higher ISO. I did a whole YouTube video of me shooting a portrait using strobe and then continuous light. With the continuous light, I had to raise my ISO up quite a bit to get the same look, same type of modifiers, and I showed the difference between strobe versus continuous. Other than the raising the ISO, they were pretty much the same thing. The results, light is light, right? The bigger the modifier, the softer the light. And so, but I did discover that I had to go and apply a little noise reduction to my shadows, primarily my shadows. And you'll notice that in the results that your pure blacks really show the noise very quickly. So, on occasion, you can run your image through twice, or when you go into Photoshop, you can also go into filter to where the raw filter sort of interface, and you can apply noise reduction there too. I'm doing it here in RAW, but you can do it later. It's recommended to do it in RAW, but where you say, you know what, it looks great except for the shadow. So what you can do is you can run one image through say standard, maybe just a tad, maybe noise reduction. Then you go and you run a second image and you crank the noise reduction up. Then you bring them both into Photoshop, you register in them, and then you take a mask and just paint in the shadows to hide the most noticeable part of the noise in that image. So you can work in multiple images and applying a multiple degree of noise reduction. So there's lots of little tricks, and you can do that too in the sky. So sometimes what happens is I'll look at an image and go, you know what, that looks pretty good, but the sky got just a little more grain noise than I would like. So I'll run a second version of it and then just paint in the sky. So you get my point that you can apply different variations in one image. So let's take a look at, let me go over to my bridge, and we're going to take a look at the scene. Let's go over here, drop it into, well, yeah, I can drop it into Photoshop. I don't want to confuse my whole setup here. So here, whoops, that's not it. Let's go back. I want the overall wide angle. There it is. Okay, so we're going to drop this into Photoshop so you see it. So there's my scene. Not very exciting, and I didn't do any adjustments whatsoever. I didn't apply, like highlight, knock down the highlights and bring out the shadows. I just raw, boom, open it up, and every single one of these images were applied the same setting. Then when I did the noise reduction, I applied all 11 of them, 50% noise reduction, and you'll see that. So that's my wide angle scene. We're gonna zoom in. So I wanna go over to my 50 ISO, which is right here. And to my left, I have the JPEG, again, it's a JPEG, not a RAW, of it with the standard, no processing of noise reduction, and to the right is the noise reduction. Now, at 50 ISO, you're not gonna see much at all because that's your lowest, ISO. But just to show you as we go along the test. So there, don't see much noticeable at all. And at probably 100 ISO, we're gonna, again, I have to blow this up to 100% on my screen so you can see it. I don't wanna go 200%, right? That, I guess you could, but the point is that we wanna see just side by side what the difference is. So let's, and the reason why I say 100% is that is you're not going to view it at larger than 100%. When you print it, you're not blowing it up past 100%. Now you may blow it up, and you'll see when you walk up with the magnifying glass, you'll see the resolution difference. But for editing, I've always looked at my retouching at no more than 100%. I might zoom in on something more than 100% to do some fine-tune retouching. But when it comes to viewing, I leave it at 100%. Now, again, you may, you can challenge that. But again, I'm looking at what my native eye would look on a monitor or when it comes to a print. Now, a lot of times, I'll notice that when I look at my screen and I do my evaluation and then I go and make a print, I might notice something in the print that I didn't really see on the monitor. Sometimes that's because it's in a something I can touch and hold and spin around, lighting and whatever. So when you make your prints, sometimes it's a good idea to make sure that you look at it. And sometimes I go out into the really bright light and say, oh, what am I, don't look at a really low lighting situation. So to make my evaluation. So, all right, 200%, let's zoom in a little bit. And it did knock down a little bit of the noise. In the sky here, there's a little noise, and I didn't line my images up perfectly here, but in this area here, you can see that it did clean it up. Now, what I do is normally look at, there's a bird flying there, it looks like. I'll look at little things like, here's the water, the buildings. And I do see a noise reduction cleanup in even at 200% or 200 ISO. So what does that tell you? The noise reduction option is a really amazing tool that we can use. So there's 100% at 400 ISO. I'm looking here. So let's go in at 200%. Well, let's go to 300%. Whoops, I clicked the wrong button here. Definitely see some noise here. Clean as a whistle here. So, but again, I would go down to 100%, and I don't really see that noise at 400 ISO over here. But if I was concerned, I might take a look at it. So let's go to, we're at 800%. There's 800 ISO at 100%, and then let's zoom in at 300%. So look at the difference between the two buildings. So here we have noise. It's getting pretty grainy. Over here, it's smooth, very smooth. And if we go back down to 100, it looks pretty clean over here. And here you can definitely see in the shadows, there's a little bit of noise at 800 ISO. Well, I wouldn't have thought that. I would have thought maybe 800 would perform better than that. But again, we're taking a magnifying glass to it. So let's go to 1600. Now we're going to probably start seeing some pretty good noise here. So at 100%, I'm looking at my screen, I definitely can see some noise. In the noise reduction, looks pretty clean. So let's zoom in here and look at the difference between the two the building here. On the left is the standard noise reduction, and over here it looks pretty clean. And I would say that looks really acceptable at 300%. So let's go back down to 100%. I would say that looks super clean. And I would, at 1600, I would definitely apply noise reduction. And I also would say that is acceptable for me to shoot at 1600 ISO for my taste, my preferences. So now we're at 3200. So let's go to 100%. Definitely see noise there on the right. Looks pretty clean. Let's blow it up to 300%. Wow. So at 3200 ISO, look at the noise over here in the building. Over here, you see a little bit of noise. Not bad. But look what it does to the water. It does a little bit of kind of like it mushes the tones together a little bit. So I think at this point, look at the pylons over here. Look at the pylons over here. You can see that the shadows, you got lots of noise there. The noise is gone in the deep shadows, but you get some weird, well, that water is kind of a strange thing over here too, but I think if you look over here, it definitely looks a little fake. So at 3200 ISO, at 300%, at 100%, I think I could get away with it. And I might live with that, but still I think that's pushing my limit. So I would say for me, I would try to keep it at 1600 or below. Maybe I would say 2000 if I could go just a little bit. And I have shot things at 2000 before, but 3200 is pushing it for me. So let's look at 6400. Let's go to 100% first. So at 100%, I can see noise like crazy. And over here, it looks pretty good, but when we blow it up, you see the difference between the two. It's almost night and day. And so if you had to, you could apply that 50% noise reduction and deliver an acceptable image to your client. But if you're doing something like, an eagle flying across, the snow-capped mountains and whatever in Alaska, what are we at? We're at 6,400 is probably pushing it. Once again, your test could be different than mine. So at 2800, I know it's going to be pretty bad. So let's go to 100%. Wow. It's really noisy on the left. It almost looks like I wouldn't hand that over to anyone. On the right, I'd be hard pressed. Maybe if I was a news photographer and I had to deliver something, no matter whatever it was a award-winning shot if something happened. I might get away with that, but not for my fine art work or whatever. All right, so we're at 256. My zeros got messed up there, but let's zoom in. 100%. Well, definitely the left doesn't work. The right, too much for me. All right, so we got one more to go here. 512,000. Geez, good thing I'm not writing a check. Okay, 100%. Well, on the left, it just looks like, you know, you're in a snowstorm. On the right, I wouldn't, let's go to 300%. Pretty bad. But again, I think that now I have a better idea of where my threshold is. As I always say, when I do like 32-bit processing, I always tell people, don't take my word for it. Go out and do the test yourself. So when I talk about the different ways to do 32 processing, we're going to do one of those for you, one of those lessons. Again, you have to do your own test. And I think in doing this test, I had to put it together for you guys, I learned something. I never thought, well, okay, now I have a little bit better idea. Now, there's one other thing that I'll talk about, and then we're done with this session. And that is when you do long exposures. So let's say your camera defaults generally at 30 seconds. And then, of course, you saw me, I was doing some 2-minute, 3-minute, 4-minute exposures. So without question, the longer, if you do a 4-minute exposure, it's going to look probably a little noisier than your 30-second exposure. So you might test that. Say, I really love the cloud streaking. I want some super long exposures. I just purchased a 15-stop ND filter. So that makes a great filter to do, say, 4 to 5 minute exposures. And then you run your test there with just, maybe you say, okay, 2,000 is acceptable, but what happens if I do that on a 2-minute or 5-minute exposure? And you say, might be have to go down to 1,000 ISO is the highest I'll go with long exposures. So you see all the variables there that you have to work with. So with that, I think that, I learned something, and I hope you did too. And once again, know your camera, know the parameters, know the tools. And there's a lot of things on my camera I don't even know. I mean, there's things like, that I've never had a need to run across. And there are some photographers that you talk to them and they know every single button, everything. I'm like, I'm not that kind of person. But I do have a good range of things that I know about my camera, and so you should too. And I remember when I first started out in photography, I was shooting Kodachrome, and my buddy and I drove, I was 19 years old, 20 years old. I drove up to the Monument Valley and we set up and spent the night right on the bluffs there. I don't know if you can do that today, but we did. And we got up before sunrise, so we saw just a tiny little glow of the sun coming up. And I set my camera up and I would do bracketing, and I would shoot over, under, normal. And I would do it every like 30 seconds. Pop, 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 wait, pop, 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 wait. And then the sun came up. And then it was like maybe an hour of shooting. Then I'd take all that film and I'd lay it out on a big old light box. And I'd put it in sequence so I could see where the prime light was. And I'd say right around here, because my eye doesn't see it as well. I mean, your eye shows more detail than, say, your camera. So I might think, oh, this is great light. But the camera doesn't capture it. So you find out where that sweet spot is. So you need to do that with your cameras, because your camera sees differently than you. And it's a fun little test. And I think there's a lot of tests that you can apply to make you a better photographer. So with that, we're going to continue.